Yes, y'all, we can't even be quiet in peace because I had a similar situation happen to me a couple years ago, but I didn't get a chance to quit because I got fired. Yes, I got fired for being too quiet on the job. So I got hired at a dental office a couple years ago. I used to be a dental assistant, and in order to get hired, you have to go on like a working interview. So cool. I go on my working interview. I'm hired by lunchtime. I'm signing my paperwork. So fast forward a week later, when I go to clock in, I get pulled to the side by the manager and brought into her office, and she tells me that things aren't really working out because I'm not getting along with the girls. I'm like, the girls? She referring to the other coworkers who are dental assistants who are, and I'm like, what? I'm baffled because I'm like, what issue? Like, what? I didn't even know it was an issue with the girls. Can you go into detail? Like, what issue? So she goes on to tell me that they said that they didn't feel comfortable around me because I did not talk to them. I didn't want to go to lunch with them. And I wasn't like really that friendly. So I'm just like really shocked and appalled, y'all, because I'm like, I did not really think it was an issue. The reason why I've been so quiet is because I'm the new girl. Like, I'm getting accustomed to like how y'all run your office. I came from an office that was only two exam rooms, y'all. So, and one doctor. Here you work with two different doctors, but you are assigned to like a main doctor and you kind of bounce around if they need you. And they had 8 exam rooms and about a total of 10 dental assistants. The lead dental assistant was an older black lady, and I talked to her more because she was quote unquote training me. So yeah, and she was like a little bit warmer, she just gave off like that little motherly, like, vibe. So I'm like vibing with her, talking to her more. No, I'm not really talking to the other girls because this was like a really busy office and we had to wear earpieces in our ears. So I'm like getting accustomed to that because the front desk will let you know when a patient was ready. They're talking in your ear. If a doctor and assistant ran out of anesthesia or supplies they needed, like they talking in your earpiece. So if you heard it, you had to go run and bring that to them. Why would I just be sitting around here talking to y'all? And no, I don't want to go to lunch with y'all. Like, you're not obligated. People really need to get that through their head. You do not have to sit in the lunchroom and eat lunch with your coworkers. People want to go sit in their car and talk on the phone freely, scroll on social media. Like, what is wrong with people? Like, I really got fired from a job from being too quiet. Like, old girl really wrote me a check right then and there and said, thank you for your services. Goodbye.
Now, this is one I had to bring to the table, man. We've done a few videos now of some women that got fired for being too loud. And I was like, oh my God, I came across a video where somebody actually got fired for being too quiet. So we got to talk about it. Before I give you my thoughts, I want to invite you to get in the comments and let me know your take. Everything that you just heard, maybe you can relate to this. And if so, let me know about your experience with this. One thing that I ask is keep it respectful. Don't crash out on her. I don't think there would be a reason to crash out on her. Like, she wasn't doing nothing too crazy. But please keep it respectful in the comments for those of you that may find a way to even come at this woman sideways. So this is another episode of The Daily Alarm, and we got to talk about people getting fired for being too quiet. I can totally relate to this. When I work on jobs, I guess you could say I'm more introverted, more reserved, more quiet, especially when I'm getting to know the people, the job, the environment. I gotta get a lay of the land. I'm an observer by nature. So I need to observe how things work, who people are, people's dispositions and their attitude before I be trying to go and get all chummy and buddy with people. So I want to say this. They didn't even give her no time. Like, how y'all let her go after 1 week, man? Like, what do y'all expect her to be, y'all bestie after being on the job for 1 week? I think that don't make no sense. If it was really her being fired because of her being too quiet, then I'm like, y'all didn't give her no time. Maybe there's something else under there. I'm going to take her word and assume that there's not. She did say that, people thought that she was coming off a little bit mean. And sometimes that happens. Y'all know people be having like bitchy resting face. And, some people just have this demeanor about them that, kind of repels people. And sometimes it's not even intentional. It's just the way people look, the way they come off, the vibe or the aura that they give. And that could potentially attribute to somebody getting fired because they are more quiet. Now I gotta say this because I know very much about this. Like I said, my experience is being somebody that is more quiet, more reserved when I was working for other people, whether that was in corporate or even on jobs that were not in corporate America. And the one thing you gotta recognize is that the job description, it's not the whole job. Like there is an expectation for you to develop soft skills and be able to communicate and engage with people that you work with. It goes beyond you just clocking in and doing your job. I know that's how some people want it. And let's be honest, like there are some professions where people can just block in a cubicle. Everybody is kind of isolated and off to themselves. And usually in those industries or environments, it's just those are the type of people that kind of flock to that industry where people are just by themselves. In my experience, that has not always been the case, especially not in corporate America. Like what I found in corporate America, at least in my experience, working in public accounting, is there was this team aspect, this camaraderie that was being built. And I think at the heart of it is you got to respect the culture. Like there's a culture whenever you enter any job. And that's the reason why I say when I would go into a job, I would spend, the first week or maybe even 2 weeks really getting the lay of the land, observing people, because you really also want to observe the culture. Like, do people all go off and do their own lunch, or do people go out to lunch together? That's something that you have to be mindful of. And if you notice that, oh man, people are going out to lunch a lot, which was one of my cases. Like I remember right after I got out of college and started working in public accounting, I think maybe the second or third client I got assigned working in New York, we were working on a really big team, and we had a team lead who he liked for us to go out. Now, we didn't always go out as a full team all of the time, but we typically would at least once or twice a month. Sometimes it would be for lunch, sometimes it would be for dinner, but beyond that, us as coworkers, whether you were ordering in or going out, you typically did it, whether it was in pairs, whether it was in threes. So I learned very quickly that, okay, I don't necessarily have to be besties with all of these people, but I do want to develop some type of rapport with them. And one of the ways of doing that is going out to lunch or ordering lunch with people. And it's a really small thing to do, but it can go a very long way for how people view you, because the downside is like what she mentioned. If you are unengaged as an employee, guess what? People will look at that as you being disengaged. They will look at it as you are not a team player. And in some cases, they will look at it as we no longer want you here. And you may be shocked like she is. Because, hey, technically you haven't done anything wrong. Do I think that being quiet, being more reserved, being an introvert should be a fireable offense? No, I don't even think opting out and not going to lunch with people should be a fireable offense. I've been on jobs where I did that too, where people wanted to go out and I was like, nah, I'm good. Because it just depends. Like, what is your investment level of that job? Now, like I mentioned, in corporate, I was willing to play the game because what's the big deal? Like all we're doing is going out to lunch. Ain't nobody getting into business in the sense of getting in my personal business. It's just, hey, we going out, we gonna share a meal. And when we back at the office, we cool. We doing our job and that's it. I feel like that is a part of work culture, which is learning how to adapt, learning how to be willing to make sacrifices. It doesn't mean that you can't be yourself, that you can't take time for yourself. But if that is the case, I think you should communicate that. Maybe not necessarily having to communicate it to the other coworkers, but communicating it to your supervisor. In her case, saying, hey, man, and that's the weird thing. I think now that I'm thinking about it, I think it's really weird that they just immediately let her go without giving her some type of warning or giving her the opportunity to, get more involved and get more engaged. And it's interesting because she said she did develop some type of rapport or relationship with the older Black woman on the job. And it's interesting that that person maybe didn't have the ear of the supervisor to, kind of, I'm going to say, let it be known that she wasn't completely antisocial. It just was a thing where she was just talking to somebody that wasn't, I guess, the girls that had the pull. But you never know, like the work dynamics. And even when people retell these stories, they sometimes are leaving out key details that would provide us with a lot more context. But my overall point is I don't think that somebody should be penalized or fired just because they're quiet. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. And her example is one that we can see. I know when it comes to my experience working in corporate America, it was all about relationships. And I think that's the key thing is, do you have some semblance of a relationship or rapport with the people on your job? Because I can even think about working outside of corporate America. And even in those regards, I would, have conversations with people in the break room, or, make small talk when we're, working together out in the field, or, out on the floor, whatever the case may be with that job. And that's just one of the things that I feel goes a long way when it shows that, hey, you're a team player and you're not just in your own little world and you are just repelling other people. So one thing that we can all take away from this is, if you are an introvert, especially if you're quiet, think of just, two or three ways that you can just engage, things that are not heavy. Like, it could be just sparking up a conversation, asking somebody a question, um you know going out to lunch, going in the break room, whatever the case may be. You just think about two or three things just so that you can stay engaged in that workplace. That's my take. I hope that if you haven't already, you get in the comments and share your thoughts. Let me know what you think of this situation. If you're an introvert, definitely let me know your experience of being quiet on the job and how that's worked out for you. Until next time, I'm Jay. I'll see you in the next episode of the Daily Alarm. Until then, stay blessed.